Hey class, good afternoon. I believe it is Wednesday, unless you're watching this short video on a different day. I wanted to just pop in a moment and say thanks again for all the great work in the discussions and the written assignments. Thank you for using the feedback and information that I've shared in the announcements to help you with the assignment. This week, I think, as I've said before, we're really building upon what we have done in the class. The class is almost over. I'll discuss the final in just a moment, but really building upon what we've done thus far. What I like about this class is that it really does give you a little bit of experience in developing plans, really taking a good look at those plans, developing operational briefings, etc., which is what we're discussing this week. It gives you a little bit of experience. Now, what I encourage you to do, I've encouraged this throughout the class, and I will encourage it again, is to really get those forms down, those instant command forms, and use them and practice with them. Don't just write the discussions. Don't just, write a paper. Really get some experience using those forms. And if you're not doing that, you're really missing out on opportunities to learn how to use those forms yourself versus just taking a look at, the examples that you see. I always encourage students to spend some time with those forms, looking at comprehensive emergency management plans, looking at hazard plans, and then trying to write those. After action reports, improvement plans, all those I think are very important to get some experience with, because there may be an opportunity for you to use them in the future in your work. And so doing it now, long before an incident occurs, I think is very important. So just consider that. When we take a look at those operational briefings this week, these are very important. We should have an operational briefing at the beginning of an incident if we know it's going to carry over, just like with as part of our instant action plan. If it's going to carry over more than one operational period, we need to have the instant action plan in place. It needs to be developed. Needs to be effective. Doesn't have to be a book. As a matter of fact, we don't want it to be. We just want it to be short and simple. And again, as someone else had mentioned earlier in the class to me on developing those objectives and operational briefings, they should be just short, to the point. We don't want a lot of information in there, a lot of stuff we don't need. Just short and to the point, and address some of the concerns that we may have. And I don't have the safety briefing. I think the safety briefing is important as part of those objectives, and in discussing them when we do that briefing, getting it and information out, and then certainly holding, producing those safety briefings throughout as needed, and getting that dispersed to the team, disseminated to everyone that's boots on the ground. I don't know that we always do an IAP like we should. We don't do them on a lot of incidents. A lot of times they're not written down. We just carry those out verbally, and that's okay. Getting the objectives out, I think, out there, and making sure that everyone is familiar with the incident objectives is important. Obviously, when we do those are overall objectives. There's going to be some things that happen in the field, maybe that we have to do, life safety, rescue, medical care that may not be in those objectives, and that's always going to happen. But whatever we do, whether it's on the fire scene, a wildland fire, a disaster that's taken place throughout a community or several communities involving multiple agencies, we should get those objectives out there, get them planned using unified command, and then hold our briefing. When do we do the briefing? You've discussed that in your discussion post, and that should take place when we first develop our plans. Now, interesting enough, sometimes we get into an incident, not sure it's going to be more than one operational period, and we don't always have those objectives written down. Instant command may verbalize those, but as soon as we know we're going to be there a while, we should get those written down and sent out as soon as possible, so that everyone's familiar with those incident objectives, and they should be briefed on that. And then we get the other section in there, the other crews in, then they need to be briefed as well. And so what are we going to discuss in the operational briefing? Obviously, we should have a message about what our goals are, what we're doing in this, in this operational period. We should discuss safety, assignments, anything, task force groups, divisions, etc. They're going to be involved. Sort of mention what their goals are, their job, what their objectives are for this operational period. Communications, which talk groups or channels are we going to be on, logistics, staging. All these things should be involved, so that we know what resources we have available and we can get those. And it also helps to cut down, I think, on the radio traffic, which sometimes can be overwhelming in a large incident, and sometimes radios don't work, as you know. So it does allow for us to get those resources and assets out there, get some information, just sort of a general message with those tasks that are assigned. So it's important to get the operational briefing developed, get it implemented as soon as possible. Now, we changed the operational briefing. I mentioned this, you've mentioned this in the discussion, the text talks about it. We changed that operational briefing, obviously, every time we get ready to change the shift. And in a big incident, such as a wildfire or a disaster that covers multiple jurisdictions, sometimes it can be difficult to get that out, to get it disseminated. So we should have a plan in place to use that, to get it out to everyone in the field. We'll use runners to do that. Obviously, you're not going to hold a radio announcement of all the objectives, everything that we have planned. It just takes too long and it's too cumbersome to do that. So we write it down and disseminate that to everyone in the field using runners, or even in some cases I've seen electronics used where that operational briefing is uploaded and then someone else can have access with it at a command post and then disseminate it on their end to the people where they are. And that seems to be quite effective as well. But using runners is probably the most efficient way, depending on the layout, the structure, and the geographics involved. Now, we don't see a lot, depending on where you live, you don't see a lot of those multi-jurisdictional disasters. You may have that within a county. For example, a lot of those communities are, there's towns and communities next to each other, suburban areas, and so then you would have, that's cross-jurisdictional incident that you have to deal with, and that's important. The importance of having the unified command, having all those different parties involved, so that we can all sit at the table and develop those objectives, and it's effective for everyone involved in all those jurisdictions. Because you know how that works. When an incident takes place, unless you're assigned to a particular area, that particular area may not just be in your city, it may be across into the next community, and you're working back and forth. So it's important that we're all working together on the same page. And then similarly, that can happen in a community that has fire districts, not necessarily cities, but in a fire district where you cross those district boundaries. We seem to work well here. Some areas in my county is not like this, but most of us are out where I am, in that we don't really care about the district boundary. So if there's an incident that takes place, we just handle it. And if that means we cross into another area, that's fine. We don't get upset. We're not very territorial here where I am. We just would like to provide the best patient care or services to the community we can. And if that means that your department provides that, and you have to cross into our district to assist someone, then just go do it. That's how we look at it. But by having that operational briefing, having those objectives set as part of that incident action plan, we can set all that down, make sure that we're covered legally, etc. And of course, mutual aid agreements help with that as well and provide some sort of protection for the responders and for that district or that agency that is responding. Having that in place before something happens, I think is important. And then, depending on the incident, if you have an urban search and rescue, you have, say, you have a cave-in, a building collapse, something to that effect, then we're going to have different resources from multiple agencies, possibly as part of a task force. Now, you may be different there, but our major cities here have some urban search and rescue technical capabilities to some degree, but our regional task force really has more capabilities, and then which is made up of multiple communities, and we can bring all those in and provide those services and support. So all those things need to be in place to make sure that we are protected and that we can all, as I said, work together on those objectives and get them accomplished. So take a look at those examples that I've shared in the class, if you don't mind, on those objectives, those instant action plans, and sort of use those to guide you on your work this week. Good job with your discussions and your papers. Please pay close attention to, one, making sure that you're staying on the point, following the material, the instructions. Two, make sure your grammar's correct. Use Word or some other program that has a spell check capability to check your spelling and grammar. Look at those examples that I've given you on APA. I've tried to give you some feedback in your papers. Change the discussions up a little bit this week to give you a little more feedback on your APA, and then use those links as well as the resources in the library to help you as well. Lots of good resources in the library for peer-reviewed journal articles, peer-reviewed research to help you, and then also APA. And if you're not using the tutoring services that are available, that's free. I'd encourage you to do that as well. So keep rocking. You've done a great job this week. I'll see you in the discussions. If you have any questions, let me know. And have a great rest of the week.